back again?
I am back again.
You are a terror. Is this the last one?
Last panel.
Are you still thinking of Vegas?
Yes, I am. The background.
If we can get everybody seated. We're going to now recognize the fourth panel. We have Commissioner Alan H. Selig of Major League Baseball. Commissioner Selig was not subpoenaed, called up and volunteered to come here today, and we appreciate that very much. He's accompanied by Mr. Robert Manfred, the Executive Vice President for Labor and Human Resources of Major League Baseball. We have Mr. Don Fear, the Executive Director and General Counsel of the Major League Players Association. Don, thank you very much for coming here as well. And I think you know where the lines of inquiry are going to be from the concerns from the previous panels. We have Sandy Alderson, the Executive Vice President of Baseball Operations, former General Manager of the Athletics, and Mr. Kevin Towers, General Manager of the San Diego Padres. As you know, it's our policy that we swear in all witnesses before they testify. So if you could rise with me and raise your right hand. Yeah. Thank you. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You do. Which of you are going to make an opening statement? Bud and Bob. Mr. Fear, are you going to make an opening statement as well? Very brief, and then move to questions. That's fine. Commissioner Selig, welcome very much. You know the rules. You have a light after 4 minutes and one after 5, but you take what you need. Your entire written statement is in the record, but take what you need. This is important, and I can't thank you enough. Just for the record, he sat out here the whole day. He listened to everybody that testified, the parents and everything else, and I know it's been an interesting experience for you as it has for us, and we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Major League Baseball has made progress in dealing with the issue of performance-enhancing substances. Today, I would like to describe for you that progress at both the minor league and major league level. I would also like to describe for you the newly negotiated Major League steroid policy, as well as an effort we have undertaken with the Partnership for Drug-Free America, aimed at educating America's youth on the dangers of steroid use. Before I start, Mr. Chairman, let me clarify an issue that was raised yesterday, so that there is no misunderstanding from my perspective. I will suspend any player who tests positive for an illegal steroid. There will be no exceptions. The union is aware of that, and they accept it. In 2001, I promulgated the first ever comprehensive drug testing policy for minor league baseball. In the first year of testing under that policy, the positive rate in the minor leagues was approximately 11%. Confronted with this high rate, we responded with more testing and tougher discipline. In each subsequent year, that positive rate has decreased, and the overall decrease has been dramatic. The rate was 4.8% in 2002, 4% in 2003, and just 1.7% in 2004. As we embark on the 2005 season, baseball has committed even more resources to the eradication of steroid use in the minor leagues. We will do more testing, expanding the program into the Venezuelan Summer League. And we will continue to discipline violators in a manner that our medical advisors believe will eradicate steroid use. Similar progress has been made at the major league level. In 2002, Major League Baseball reached a new agreement with the Major League Players Association, which for the first time provided for testing of Major League players for steroids. The positive rate for performance-enhancing substances in 2003 testing was in the range of 5 to 7%. This disturbing rate triggered a more rigorous disciplinary testing program in 2004. That more effective program resulted in a decline of the positive rate to 1 to 2%. In other words, the 2002 agreement that has been roundly criticized in some circles actually resulted in a significant reduction in steroid use. Despite this improvement, Major League Baseball has continued to move ahead on this most important and challenging issue. Last December, at my urging, the Players Association took the unprecedented step of reopening an existing collective bargaining agreement to allow for the negotiation of an even stronger new policy on performance-enhancing substances. This new policy addresses all of the major areas of concern raised in congressional hearings conducted in 2004. Before I turn to the specifics of the new policy, however, I want to review the background that led to our concerns and ultimately the adoption of a new policy. In the period of time following the 1994-95 strike, I began to hear more about the possibility of the use of performance-enhancing substances by players. That concern escalated with the 1998 statements involving Mark McGuire and Andro. At that time, we began a comprehensive review of the medical and health issues. Given the limitation in our collective bargaining agreement, we were prohibited from testing players to determine which particular players were using what substances. To assist us in the development of our minor league policy and later our bargaining proposals to the Players Association, we hired and relied upon experts in the areas of drugs and sports. I have relied heavily on those experts in developing and refining our policies. I want to say a word about our players, 4 or 5 of them who have just left. For some time now, the majority of our great and very talented athletes have deeply and rightly resented two things. They have resented being put at a competitive disadvantage by their refusal to jeopardize their health and the integrity of the game by using illegal and dangerous substances. And they have deeply and rightly resented the fact that they live under a cloud of suspicion that taints their achievements on the field. The cloud has been produced in part by some critics of baseball who, although well-intentioned, are not well-informed about baseball's multifaceted campaign against such substances. This campaign has produced the dramatic, quantifiable successes that I outlined earlier. Now I'd like to turn to the details of our new Major League policy. First, the new policy broadens the list of banned substances in baseball. The list includes not only all steroids, but also steroid precursors, ephedra, human growth hormone, diuretics, and other masking agents. I should add that Congress's passage of the anabolic steroid control
Commissioner, could you move the mic a little closer to you? A couple members. No, that's fine. You're doing it
of 2004 was a key development in allowing baseball to move closer to accepted international standards in that area. Second, the new policy greatly increases the frequency of testing of Major League players. Under our prior policy, each player was subject to 1 steroid test per season on an unannounced, randomly selected date. This type of testing was an important first step and will be continued in 2005. Under the old testing program, however, once a player had completed his 1 test for the year, the threat of discipline for the use of steroids was gone until the next season. To address this issue, Major League Baseball added an ongoing program of random testing for 2005 under which players can be tested multiple times in a given year. Under the new policy, no matter how many times a player is tested in a given year, he will remain subject to an additional random test. Third, the new policy for the first time introduces off-season or out-of-competition testing. In the traditional employment context, unions have understandably resisted employer efforts to intrude into off-duty hours and vacation time. To its credit, however, the Players Association has agreed to compromise the legitimate privacy concerns of its members and allow off-season testing. This off-season testing, which will literally be carried out around the globe, will ensure that players cannot use the winter as an opportunity for drug-induced performance enhancement. Baseball's new policy also provides for increased penalties. Under the new policy, first-time offenders, and as I said at the beginning of my remarks, make no mistake about this, will be suspended for 10 days without pay and will be publicly identified as having violated the policy against the use of performance-enhancing substances. A 10-day suspension will cost the average Major League player approximately $140,000 in lost salary. Penalties for subsequent offenses increase to 30 days, 60 days, and 1 year. More important in terms of deterrence, however, is the fact that no player wants to be identified to his peers and the public as a cheater. As baseball's testing program had become more strict, we've also worked to improve its quality. Last year, baseball moved its testing programs into independent Olympic laboratories certified by WADA. These labs are the gold standard in testing for performance-enhancing substances. Equally important, our relationship with these facilities has put baseball in a better position to monitor new development in the area of performance-enhancing substances. For example, baseball has already banned at both the major league and minor league levels the designer steroid DMT that was recently discovered at the WADA laboratory in Montreal. Baseball is, of course, an international game. Recognizing that fact, our efforts at eliminating the use of performance-enhancing substances have an international component. Last year, the minor league policy was expanded to the Dominican Summer League, complete with testing and educational activities. Our partners in the Mexican League have announced recently their intention to implement a program much like our minor league policy, and we will extend our minor league policy to the Venezuelan Summer League this year. Next spring, baseball and the MLBPA will conduct the first ever international baseball tournament in which countries from around the world will field teams that include the best professional players, including the biggest major league stars. As part of that event, Major League Baseball and the Players Association and the International Baseball Federation have reached an agreement whereby all participants in this event will be subject to Olympic-style drug testing in accordance with the World Anti-Doping Code. The World Tournament will not only provide great international competition, but it will mark yet another step forward in baseball's effort to deal with the problem of performance-enhancing substances. In promoting this event, baseball will emphasize this important anti-steroid message. Major League Baseball has always recognized the influence that our stars have on the youth of America. As such, we are concerned that recent revelations and allegations of steroid use have been sending a terrible message to our young people. Over the past year, we've been working with our friends at the Partnership for a Drug-Free America to determine the appropriate timing and content of public service announcement that will discourage young people from using steroids. In the coming months, you will see the product of those efforts on television, and we can only hope that those announcements will contribute to better decision-making by young athletes. My office has also had conversations with Congressman Sweeney about Major League Baseball providing support for his proposed legislation on steroid education and becoming involved in the educational programs created by that legislation. I expect that these conversations will continue and will bear fruit. Baseball will not rest and will continue to be vigilant on the issue of performance-enhancing substances as we move towards my publicly stated goal of zero tolerance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request that my entire written statement be placed in the record.
Without objection, and thank you for bearing with us. Mr. Manfred.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, committee members, I especially appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and I'd like to take the opportunity to respond to some of the issues raised in the committee's letter to Commissioner Selig and Mr. Fear. At the outset, I should say that baseball has worked hard to negotiate and improve its drug policy in recent years. We know that we have made significant progress in this area. At the same time, we know that the policy is not perfect. Our collective bargaining agreement, like every collective bargaining agreement, is a living document. There is the pure language, there's the understandings of the parties, and there are the parties' practices. Tonight, I'd like to try to explain to you what the agreement means based on those language, understandings, and practices. I hope I can convince you that I'm reading the agreement correctly. And in making that determination, I urge you to take into consideration that the gentleman that I negotiated the agreement with, Mr. Fear, agrees with everything that I'm about to tell you. First, much has been made out of the fact that our agreement sets forth penalties in the disjunctive. For each offense, there is a suspension of a specified length or a fine amount. The formulation of the penalties was included in our 2002 agreement and was carried forward into the new agreement. In retrospect, the language, as a drafting matter, should have been altered. There is, however, no misunderstanding or dispute between the bargaining parties as to how the agreement is going to operate. We informed the MLBPA at the bargaining table while we were negotiating the agreement that the Commissioner intends to and will suspend across the board for all violations. The owners ratified the agreement with this understanding. It is also my understanding that Mr. Fear's constituents are in the process of ratifying based on the same understanding. The agreement might have been drafted better, but even as it sits, it provides the Commissioner with the unfettered right to do what he has said he is going to do, namely suspend all players who violate the agreement. Moreover, those suspensions are automatic in the sense that they are for stated periods of time, and the union has taken the unprecedented step of waiving its right to contest the length of those suspensions. Our commitment to suspend also undercuts the committee's criticism with respect to the topic of disclosure. Under the agreement, if a player tests positive and is suspended, it will be reported in the transaction list that is published in every paper in America that the player tested positive for violating the joint drug agreement. Given that we only test for steroids under the joint drug agreement, everyone will understand that the suspension was based on a steroid test. In terms of the general confidentiality language in our agreement, I would point out that virtually every drug program in America contains such general confidentiality language, including the programs that have been adopted by the federal government to cover its employees. The assertion that all steroids are not banned under the baseball policy is simply not correct. The plain language of our agreement bans all steroids that are on Schedule 3, as well as any other anabolic androgenic agent that cannot lawfully be obtained in this country. The list of substances in the agreement is clearly identified, explicitly identified, as a non-exhaustive list. As to the 4 substances specifically mentioned in your letter, we have discussed those with our experts. 2 of the substances are anabolic androgenic agents that cannot lawfully be obtained in the United States and as such are banned under the general language in our program. A 3rd, boldenone, is a nutritional supplement that Congress inappropriately excluded from the Steroid Control Act of 2004. We have been in conversations with the DEA, and we understand that that substance is going to be added to Schedule 3 as the first additional substance under the Steroid Control Act, at which time it will be automatically banned under our agreement. The 4th substance listed is DHEA, which, despite our lobbying efforts, was excluded from the Steroid Control Act of 2004. I would now like to address the issue of diuretics and masking agents. At page 6 of our agreement, it says, any test conducted under the program will be considered a positive under the following circumstances. Item 3, a player attempts to substitute, dilute, mask, or adulterate a specimen sample in any other manner alter a test. In order to enforce this provision of the agreement, the Montreal Laboratory has been instructed by the MLBPA and I that they are to test for their standard list of diuretics and masking agents, continuing a practice that has existed under our agreements. The assertion that our policy fails to ban designer steroids is contrary to the language and history of this agreement. The language banning, quote, anabolic androgenic steroids that are not covered by Schedule 3 but that may not be lawfully obtained in the United States has been previously used by the bargaining parties to ban THG and DMT. The bargaining parties have relied on this language in the contract to ban designer steroids in the past and will do so in the future. I would also point out that substances that fall within this definitional language in the contract are added automatically to our banned list without the necessity for action by the Health Policy Advisory Committee. The committee's criticisms on our position with respect to human growth hormone were addressed earlier today. I want to reiterate that our experts, including the director of the WADA Certified Laboratory in Montreal and our drug testing expert, Dr. Gary Green from UC